Okay, welcome to day 9 of scripture reading for this Lenten study through the letters of Samuel. Today is chapter 17 and 18. All right, we left off yesterday. It was a reading. Um, Saul uh, had failed once more. And so David is anointed king. However, David's not anointed. He's not king yet. Saul remains. And so you can gather what the interesting dialogue is going to be in upcoming chapters. One who is supposed to become king, who's anointed to be king, and the other one that has his existing position to protect. I am certainly not saying that this is Samuel and Saul and repeat, because Samuel was very different than Saul. But yet, in the same way, there was some awkward transition from Samuel to Saul. It's going to be further awkward from Saul to David. Okay, so while David's not king yet, he's going to get a once in a lifetime opportunity to immediately validate himself against the arch nemesis, the Philistines. This is similar to how Saul was able to validate himself early on through military battle. Well, this is going to be much more substantial. David is younger than Saul was. David's not fighting, leading an army. David is doing this himself. And we likely all know this story. The Hebrews and the Philistines are at battle once more. And here is this specimen called Goliath, a great creature, challenging everyone to a personal fight. Blaspheming God as well, it seems. Everyone's afraid to fight this Goliath. He's an impressive fellow. David's brothers, remember the 7 brothers, the ones that were called to meet Samuel in the previous chapter when David was left as an afterthought. Well, David's something of an afterthought again. His brothers are at war. But David is the least. He's keeping sheep. A remedial task, and not only remedial, it's not an honor task in that culture. And so his responsibility also is he's going to deliver some food to his brothers. He's getting messages from the battlefield and relaying them back to his father, Jesse. Jesse's concerned for his 7 sons at war, as well as the welfare of the broader circumstance. So David is going to see Goliath, and David gets concerned. And he finds out that Saul has promised wealth and his own daughter to whoever can defeat this Philistine. David's intent on getting involved. His brothers get upset. They want him to stay out of it. They tell him, "Why don't you just go back and keep your few sheep?" It doesn't take a PhD in social readings to realize that they're being demeaning here, condescending, insulting to him. But David's going to get involved. He goes to Saul. He says, well, I've been keeping sheep. See, I fought off lions. I fought off bears. I'm going to fight this guy. Well, Saul says, you might as well wear my armor, the king's armor. David puts it on. He can't maneuver in all of this mess. Just let me go out with my slingshot. And of course, don't you know the story? He strikes Goliath there in the temple. Goliath falls. And when Goliath falls, the army of Israel gets the momentum. They get their charge. They get their morale. They're going to fight the Philistines, and they're going to push them back. Well, of course, Saul sees all of this and asks, who's this guy's father? Well, David has been playing the instrument for Saul, as we saw in the previous chapter, but he seems to be under Saul's radar, obviously, until now. And so Saul's going to find out about David. David's going to become closer to Saul, and it's hard to say whether it's it might be a keep your enemies closer kind of deal. But David and Jonathan, Saul's son, they become friends. Jonathan's very giving to David when he should be jealous of David. And so this is all here to help propel the negative view that we're going to reach of Saul. Jonathan's not threatened by David, but Saul is threatened by David. David and Saul really aren't counterparts here. David and Jonathan are. So Jonathan should be jealous, but it's Saul who's jealous. Okay, Saul said, you're going to stay with me. And he begins to send David out on these various missions, and David is successful at all of them. Eventually, they're parading in their military parades. The women are singing. Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. Well, I think we realize what's building here between these two characters. Saul is insecure. We've seen a lot of things from him, and now we're seeing insecurity at a greater scale. And so he's going to be playing mind games, manipulative games, passive-aggressive games with David. He's going to be throwing spears at David. He realizes he can't just get rid of David, so he's going to give him responsibility, give him promotion. He's afraid of David. He's hoping maybe David will die carrying out his responsibilities. David is going to marry Saul's daughter. This is very humbling for David. He acknowledges that he's a nobody. He's a nobody even within his own household, amongst his brothers. He's humbled at the prospect of marrying Michal, Saul's daughter. But Saul's going to play these mind games. If you want my daughter, the price is you have to go out and kill 100 Philistines. So, as we might expect of David at this point, he's going to go out and kill 200. And, of course, Saul is going to become even more afraid. So, what we're seeing in just a short time here of David's character introduction, as well still in a relatively short time since Saul has been introduced, we're seeing higher highs for David. Everything David's doing is just getting more and more impressive. However, simultaneously, we're seeing lower lows for Saul. He's further regressing. Everything is making him look worse. Samuel's gone now. He really doesn't come into play hardly anymore. And we know where this is going. Even if we didn't know the story, we realize here David is rising, and Saul is deteriorating in front of our eyes here on these pages of ink. But if you want drama, well, you might be pleased to know that there's going to be further bitterness here between these two characters. And so I will meet you again tomorrow as we conclude our reading for this week. Take care.